Spoiler alert, you can't actually raise kids without bias because every decision you make is shaping their worldview. Here's my confession. I'm actually a recovering judgment phobe myself. I used to feel so afraid of being called the J word, judgmental, that I was always disclaiming and going to great lengths to make sure that everybody understood that I wasn't judging anyone. Who was I to judge? And I bet you have that feeling because if you're in a Western culture, you too feel that being judgmental in any kind of capacity is like the mother of all sins. Now, let me just first start by steel-manning this and saying, I get where this comes from and I can understand myself and why I'm so nervous of being called judgmental. It's not for naught. It comes from the real and sordid history of certain groups being marginalized and judged based on their immutable characteristics, like their race, their skin color, their sexuality, their nationality, or their religion. This is the type of thing that we have seen in all of the civil rights movements from the 60s, etc., fighting against, right? Fighting for equal rights before the law and not to be judged based on things like your biological sex. And those things are good. I believe that people should have equal rights before the law. And I believe that we shouldn't judge people based on their immutable characteristics. But this massive fear of being seen as bigoted, as misogynistic, as racist, has led us to be afraid of being judgmental of anything, being judgmental of any other lifestyle, life choice, value system, belief system, to the point where we're actually fumbling over our words, losing our sense of self, losing our moral compass, and not being able to guide our children into what constitutes a good and meaningful life. And that's where I take issue with it, because when it swings too far in the other direction of removing all judgment whatsoever, it actually makes us lose our discernment. It makes us lose our ability to articulate moral ideas, ethical choices, just good, healthy, safe choices. And it makes us so afraid of being seen as judgmental of other people that we're actually not giving our kids the guidance that they really need in their life. Today, I'm going to give you 5 clear ways to avoid this so that you can bring back that healthy dose of good, positive, necessary, healthy judgment so that you can offer your kids the direction, the boundaries, and the guidance that they need and deserve to build a life that is meaningful and well lived. Hi, welcome back to Hi Fam. I'm Avital. I'm here on a mission to help you to build a strong family culture. I really believe from the bottom of my heart that our families are the most meaningful project of our lives, and that raising children literally means shaping the future. I also look around and have extreme empathy because I know the crisis that we parents are in, the difficulties of raising children in this day and age. Modern parenting might be full of more prosperity and peace than any generation prior, but it's also so full of so much confusion and noise that it becomes really difficult for us to find our confidence, our clarity, and our conviction. But if that's something that you want, then you are in the right place. Make sure to hit the subscribe and the like, and let's get into it. So I want to start with a comment someone left me on one of my recent videos. And this commenter said, you shouldn't make judgments on other people unless their behavior harms others. This commenter is expressing a very common Western idea. It's actually a very rare idea, and it's only true in the weird countries, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic countries. In these countries, we hold the idea that the only moral judgment one should ever pass is if someone else is harming someone, specifically physically harming them, but also emotionally and spiritually harming them. If we can make a direct claim to harm that is in the immediate future, then we can say that's the wrong thing to do. Like it's wrong to go up to someone and hit them, okay, because it harms them. That's clear to us. But every other form of moral judgment has become really difficult for us to articulate. And the person who writes about this in the most beautiful, eloquent, and in-depth evidence-based way is Jonathan Haidt in his book, The Righteous Mind. And in this book, he actually shows how this is a very unique perspective, and it's actually the minority perspective in the world. The majority of cultures out there have a lot of different moral judgments about what is the right and wrong way to live. Whether they're rooted in culture, in history, or in religion, they have ideas of things that are wrong even when they cause no harm. Really interesting research has actually shown that when people in the West are asked why siblings can't have sexual relationships, if, for example, they are using 100% protection and birth control, if we know that they could not get pregnant and have offspring, then why is it wrong? if they're two consenting adults. And people in the West find it almost impossible to articulate why they feel that this is wrong, because they can't use the system of harm. No one is being harmed. There are two consenting adults, live and let live. Who am I to judge? As long as they're not harming anyone, it's okay. And they can't articulate why it's wrong, but they have that moral gut instinct, the disgust that often goes along with moral judgment. That's the emotion that's attached to moral judgment, to say that it is wrong. And there are many interesting case studies like that where people come up with these scenarios where no one is being harmed, but something is actually wrong. And then the question is, well, maybe it's beyond harm. Maybe there are some things that we feel are wrong as a society, that we feel are wrong for the individual, for our soul, for our psyche, for our emotional life, for us as a culture, that aren't just to do with direct harm involved. I'll keep reading this person's comment. She says, pushing expectations of marriage onto your children is not good. Your child might be gay or asexual or just uninterested in marriage and having children. It is better to let them live the life they want to live, not the life you want them to live. And no, I'm not worried that I'm being judgy here because your belief is harmful. So therefore, it is fair to me to criticize it. Okay, so interesting. So she's saying my belief that I would love for my children to get married and start their own families when they grow up, and that I guide my children to hopefully build a life that will lead them there, is a harmful belief. That I am putting on my children something judgmental, something harmful, something that is restrictive, that might not fit them. They might grow up and find that they are not suited for marriage for all of the reasons that she just suggested, that they in fact want a different life. And then I've done them some kind of harm by putting these expectations on them. She's saying that idea is actually harmful and you should just completely release and not put any expectations on them, and better to let them live the life they want to live, not the life you want them to live. So what she's saying, and this is true for many people in the West, they feel this, is that parents should not want something for their children. You shouldn't have a desire or a belief or a yearning or a direction or guidance or suggestions or even just advice for your child on how to lead a healthy life or a good life or what you think might benefit them or society. You shouldn't have any moral judgment whatsoever about what would be good, because you should just let them lead the life you want to live. So basically, you're a glamorized babysitter and provider, but don't offer any kind of actual emotional, spiritual guidance in making good choices for their life. Now, I'm going to pick this apart today because I think this is actually the root cause, the crux of the crisis we have in Western parenting today. Western parents today, modern parents, are so afraid of their own shadow, are so squeamish about offering any kind of life advice. Even the idea that, I hope you grow up, get married, and have kids one day seems archaic, seems forced, seems controlling to them, that they are completely lifting their hands up, completely taking steps back from being any kind of life guide for their children. But there are a few massive flashing neon red flags in this approach, and that's what we're going to break down here today. Let's start with the fact that there are plenty of behaviors that our children could engage with that don't show any immediate, clear-cut, direct causational harm to anyone else, right? That's what this commenter said. She said it needs to cause harm to other people in order for it to be wrong and in order for parents to guide their children on it. But there are so many behaviors that our children could engage in that don't seem to cause harm to anyone else, or that even to themselves cause only very kind of indirect, long-term, questionable harm, that I still think parents should absolutely jump in with guidance, judgment, and correction. For example, a child could waste their pocket money. Okay, they get some pocket money or they save some pocket money and they have no financial discipline. They spend it all, right? They blow it all on junk, right? They just buy themselves tchotchkes that end up in the garbage. That is not causing harm to anyone. You could even argue it's not even causing harm to the child. They are having fun. They are enjoying what they're doing. They like the little junk that they get. And what harm does it do? Well, the fact is that we want to teach our children financial stability, financial discipline. We want to teach them self-control and impulse control, even though those behaviors aren't necessarily harming other people. The thing is that things that cause harm often cause that harm in a very long-term, insidious, indirect way. Sometimes it's even a correlation, not a causation. In other words, it's not actually spending all the money on junk that causes the harm, but it's the lack of self-discipline and self-control that in the long term lead to financial instability, which could lead to harm to our child. And it could even lead to harm to society. Maybe our child will become a burden on society. Being rude, being dismissive, rolling their eyes at adults, again, doesn't really cause harm. Someone rolling their eyes at me doesn't actually hurt me, doesn't actually do something physically dangerous to anyone, right? But it destroys their character. It destroys their future relationships. It's not good for them. That is not a good way to go through life. They will not garner favor in other people's eyes. People will not be fond of that. Quitting things when it gets hard, again, doesn't cause any harm. As long as they're not, letting down their team, why does it matter if they quit? Well, because repetitive compulsive quitting actually teaches kids that they shouldn't push through challenges. It builds fragility. They don't become resilient. They don't learn that they can withstand even some discomfort and stresses. Again, doesn't cause any harm to others. But yes, there is a moral judgment in teaching kids that they can just quit everything all the time. It does seem wrong to me because I don't think it benefits them in the long haul, even if they're not causing any harm to anyone. Obsessing over social media or vanity metrics. If your child is seeking validation through likes, that breeds insecurity and entitlement in your child. Again, they're not causing harm to anyone, right? And you're not causing harm to anyone. Your hands are off. Hey, I'm just letting them live the life they want to live, right? Like that commenter said, just let them live the life they want to live. Well, my daughter wants to be a social media influencer. She wants thousands of eyes ogling at her. She wants to pose provocatively and overtly sexualize herself. She wants to be admired and looked up to for her physical attributes or for the logos and the brand names that she's acquired in her big hauls. Hey, she's not causing harm to anyone, is she? Let her live the life she wants to live. I should just let her live the life she wants to live. Who am I to judge? Who am I to say that I don't think that's a good life choice, right? How about poor eating manners or refusing to eat your vegetables or being picky or being obsessed with junk food, right? Poor eating habits leads to poor health. It leads to inability to function as adult, to obesity, to all manner of ailments, right? But it's not causing harm to anyone else. You're just destroying your own body. In fact, we shouldn't judge any form of self-harm because they're not harming other people. Oh, but they are harming themselves. But what about live and let live? What about them being allowed to make their own life choices and that we should just stay out? Just like you shouldn't tell your child, I hope you get married someday. Don't tell your child, I hope you maintain a healthy weight so that you can live in a strong and healthy body. No, let them live the life that they want to live. When your child just expects life to happen instead of putting any effort in, it might lead to a very mediocre life or even to a dependent life, but it doesn't cause any harm. Why would you say anything about that? Let them live their life the way they want to live. How about blaming instead of taking ownership, having a victim mindset? Does it harm anyone else? Well, not directly. You're not actually beating anyone up. So who am I to judge that if I want to tell my child that they should have a better mindset and empower themselves and take responsibility and accountability? Victim mindset might not harm others, but it does create helpless, bitter adults. But we shouldn't judge that, right? Or even something as silly as dressing sloppily and having no self-respect. Let kids wear whatever they want to wear. Let them present however they want to present. Why should we tell them to brush their hair if they don't want to? Maybe they're just not into brushing. Maybe that's just not their orientation. Their orientation is for knotty hair and messy hair or even lice-infested hair. Who are you to judge? And what about our kids' friendship circles? If they want to hang out with rude or problematic kids who are doing all sorts of dodgy things, who are we to judge? Yes, you are the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with the most, but we parents are not supposed to be imposing on our children any form of judgment about how they live their lives, right? Because they're not harming anyone. They're just hanging out with people. And you should accept that and celebrate that and never judge it because you're just here to chauffeur them around and pay the bills. Okay, I hope I've hammered in that point enough. But the reason I bring all of these examples is because according to this commenter, if you can't see the direct harm in their behavior, then it means that you are not supposed to judge. And further, just because you believe that some life choices like building financial stability or finding a lifelong love and building a family with them or maintaining your health and wellness are good choices, you shouldn't impose and inflict any of that onto your children because you're just there to run the household, pay the bills, chauffeur them around, clean up after them, and never whisper a word of guidance. Come on. I connect to Ivush, another commenter, much more, who wrote, "In my family, we used to talk about values, morals, principles, choices, and it helped me create a compass for myself. And yet, I've caught myself second guessing when doing the same with my kids. I find this channel really inspiring and thought-provoking. Thank you for putting your content out there." You're welcome, and thank you for the kind comment. And that really hit home for me because I see that with so many of my students and with myself, that we are more doubtful, that we are second guessing, that we are so afraid of being called bigoted or judgy that we aren't actually helping our children with any conversations about values, morals, principles, and life choices. But just like Ivush said, these are the things that actually help children create a compass for themselves. It helps inoculate them against bad ideas. It helps them not fall prey to cults or to radicalization. And this is the type of thing that, yes, is absolutely the purview and the role of us parents. All right, so with all that said, I told you I'm a recovering judgment phobe myself. In fact, I used to use judgment-free to describe our online community inside the HiFam studio. Check it out at hifam.com/studio. It is the most amazing and supportive community online, and we really don't judge each other in the negative sense. We're always offering the benefit of the doubt, and we're always seeing each other's goodness and holding each other's goodness to light. And we're always assuming the best and offering the most charitable and generous interpretation of each other's posts and questions. However, of course, we do also offer judgment. We offer tough love. We offer pushback. We offer real critical thinking because, yes, we do need to make judgments and discernments about what is good and what is less good as parents. So with all of that said, let's jump into the 5 things I think we can do to get over that judgment phobia and offer our children the real guidance that they need in their lives. Number 1, the myth of neutral parenting. This commenter is saying that if I don't pass any judgments on marriage or not marriage, for example, then my child will just be free to make whatever choice that they want to make. But the truth is that we parents and our culture are passing on judgments to our children all the time, whether we like it and acknowledge it or not. And if you aren't offering them guidance and shaping and ideas, then they will get those. They just won't get it from you. They'll get it from social media, from peers, from influencers, from celebrities. And the fact is that they will get messages and they will absorb values from somewhere. Now, you may or may not align with those values. If you are completely neutral, then it will just come from TikTok. It will come from the Kardashians. It will come from whatever's popular in that moment. So if you don't actively teach right from wrong or offer them life guidance and advice, they will get it. It just won't be from you. And it won't be neutral. There is no such thing as neutral. Every single culture, religion, nationality, community have their values. They have the things that they uphold, they believe in. They have those ideals, those heroes. They have the things that they think are better than other things. They pass judgment. Every single community upholds certain people on a pedestal and points to them and says, look, my child, emulate this person. So for example, if you live in the Western world and your child is on TikTok, they might look at people like Kim Kardashian as the hero to emulate. They might look at her lifestyle choices, at what she wears, at her relationships, at her parenting, at her finances and business, and all of the things that make her who she is and try to emulate that. They might say, well, these are the values of my culture. This is what I should try to be like. These are the life choices I should make. If you live in a religious community, say you're a churchgoer, then you might look at religious leaders or at Jesus himself as the hero to emulate, as the person to look up to, and as the values that I want to copy. Every single culture holds certain values up on a pedestal over other values. Every single community is sending messages that children absorb over what things they believe constitute the best lifestyle and the best life choices. And whether or not you're owning that and articulating that and making it clear to your children, they will be getting that message. So if you would like to offer them some countercultural advice, if you would like to balance out that advice, if you think that maybe it's lacking and you have some wisdom to share, if you believe in yourself and you think you have some life experience and a fully developed prefrontal cortex and a bit of wisdom and maybe something that you could offer your children in terms of some nuggets and some life advice and some breadcrumbs for them to follow, then you should know that you are shaping their worldview. Whether you intend to or not, might as well make it intentional. Number 2, judging is not about control. It's about leadership. In our world today, we think of any kind of hierarchy and any kind of authority as oppressive. And unfortunately, that includes the family. Today, because we're so imbibed with this idea of the oppressed versus the oppressive, we apply that framework to every single institution, organization, and even to our family life itself. And we think that because we hold the power and we think all relationships are based on power dynamics, right? This is kind of that woke theory of everything is about power and everyone is either a victim or an oppressor. That has actually seeped into our family relationships. And in our family relationships, because we are the authorities and we're older and all of the things that we have, like, legal freedoms and legal responsibilities and financial rights and privileges that our children don't have, we see ourselves as the privileged class and therefore as the oppressor. And then we see our children as a victim. And then we think, oh, we are oppressing them with our guidance, right? We're colonizing them. We are actually controlling them. We are somehow humiliating them or taking away their humanity by offering them rules and guidance and consequences and follow through. And this entire framework is false, but it's actually incredibly harmful, I think, to our family dynamics. Because the truth is that parents, by and large, are a benevolent authority. Yes, we're authorities. We're little dictators in our home. We call the shots, but we're loving and we are not driven by a power hunger. We are not driven by a demeaning or oppressive charge. That is not what drives us. Our ambition is not to squelch our children. Our ambition is not to squash their rebellion or to dampen their spirits. I genuinely believe that these ideas that started in the ivory tower in the universities and have seeped into every single institution are what is causing us parents to feel so uncomfortable with our own position of authority and leadership. And it's because we've been convinced that there is no such thing as benevolent good leadership, because we think that everything in the world is about power dynamics. And if someone has power, then that means they are an oppressor. And if they are an oppressor, they are therefore causing harm to their victim, the oppressed. But you are not causing harm to your children by leading them. You are not causing harm to your children by offering them guidance, rules, boundaries, and directions. You are not an oppressive authority. They are not a victim at your hands. Now, it's true that historically, some very harsh, strict, authoritarian-style parenting that even did use physical punishment was oppressive. And it's good that we've had a bit of a swing back to that, and we are no longer behaving in those controlling and oppressive ways inside of our homes. But we're not talking about authoritarian parenting here. We're talking about authoritative parenting. Authoritative parenting balances high expectations with high support. And it means that we aren't there to squash our children's spirit, to keep them down, to keep them small, and to hoard all the power for ourselves. We're actually here to empower them. The truth is that every single society makes judgments about what constitutes a good life. And parents must do the same if we're to have any kind of leadership role and influence role for our children, if we're to be relevant in their lives at all, and if we're to offer them the inheritance that they deserve. I mean, I'm going to guess that if you have $1 million, then you're going to share some of that with your children in their inheritance. But you have $1 million or more worth of wisdom, of life advice, and of life experience. Why would you withhold that from them? It is so unfair to expect children to invent the wheel of leading a good life, of what constitutes right and wrong, of making good choices for themselves, and just expect them to be a blank slate, a new individual who comes into the world without any cultural context, without any cultural inheritance, and without any links and ties to previous generations in the world around them. That is literally robbing them of their sense of belonging and of everything that has accrued over millennia. People have been struggling with these questions of what it means to lead a good life, from Greek philosophers through the Talmud, through the modern day Enlightenment, and all of the major religions. They have been grappling with these questions, struggling with them, and debating them over years and years and generations. And you're going to tell your child, you're on your own, bud. I'm not going to tell you how to live. Just don't cause anyone harm and you'll be fine. Come on. The fact is that collectively as humans, we've come up with a lot of different structures, ideas, and formats for guidelines for leading a good life and for passing moral judgment. And it goes way beyond just immediate harm. If you fail to guide your child towards long-term success, such as having a stable lifelong relationship, such as having financial stability or long-term health, then you aren't giving them what they need to set them up for success in life. The fact is that prevention is much better than damage control. And while they're still young, you can plant the seeds and offer the life skills, the direction and the guidance, the community and the support to make good life choices that lead to stable, productive lives. So teaching values isn't about controlling our children. It's about leading them well and setting them up for success from the utmost place of love. It's about service. Number 3, there are some non-negotiables for a strong, healthy life. You know, this commenter at the beginning told me that I shouldn't encourage my child to get married in the future because what if they don't want to? And the fact is that that might happen. Maybe my children, for whatever reason, asexuality, homosexuality, bad luck in relationships, or just a disinterest in the institution of marriage, they may well make that decision. Only time will tell. But the idea that we as parents can't offer them some ideas, some advice, and some guidance on what would constitute a more stable, happier, and healthy life is ludicrous to me. Actually, this is a really easy one for me because the research is really clear that people who have long-term stable marriages have tremendous benefits. They live longer, they are physically healthier, they have more sex, and they make more money, and they have more children, which leads them to lead meaningful, happy, relationship-filled lives. Who wouldn't want that for their kids? Marriage and family provide stability, meaning, company, a sense of belonging. It leads to happiness, to security, to better outcomes. So you're gonna bet I'm gonna pass that judgment for my children and tell them this is something to strive for. Will they necessarily make it there? No. Will I not love them anymore or not tolerate them or force them? Or no, if it doesn't work out, that's a shame. And we move on and make the most of what we've got. That doesn't mean that's something to strive for. Take financial stability, which might be an easier one for you to wrap your head around. I think it's easy for all of us to say with confidence that we prefer for our children to be financially stable and not dependent. Debt, stress, dependency are real risks. If our children don't make solid financial choices for themselves, then they are likely to lead a life that is extremely stressful, less productive, less enjoyable, less healthy, and they might become a burden to society. So teaching them financial skills is an act of love. Is it judgmental to say, hey, I think it's better to get a good paying job, or I think it's better to live within your means, or I think it's better to save something for retirement? Yeah, it's judgmental. I think people who don't do that are making a less good choice, inferior choice. I think it's less good outcomes. It's not great for them. So we're going to pass those judgments because we want to set our child up for success. Now, what if they want to be homeless? What if they want to live in poverty? What if they hate money? Okay, well, those things might happen. But as a parent, I'm going to try and guide them not to get into those situations. There are so many things that your child needs your guidance on, from hookup culture to drug use, to how to dress and present themselves to the world, to all the life skills that they need to develop, basic hygiene and education, and all of the good choices that they can make that are going to set them up to have meaningful relationships and productive work. And yeah, those are all moral judgments on what it means to lead a good life. But the best parents don't just hope that their kids figure it out. They don't just say, well, it's better to let them live the life they want. No, it's better to teach them what actually works. Number 4 is that discipline equals freedom. I think this original commenter and anyone who says, hey, hands off, don't tell your child how to live, don't pass judgments, don't tell them that it's better to get married or better to get a job or better to get educated or better to have good friends or better to stay off drugs or better to stay at a healthy weight. Don't make any of those judgments on your child, you disgusting bigot. You shouldn't be telling them any of that. They want your child to have ultimate freedom, right? I think that's at the base of it. That's the value that they are putting above all other values. And here's the thing, I actually agree with them. I think having personal individual freedom is a really good value. I think it's something I do want my children to have. I want them to have a lot of freedom in their life. But maybe the difference between me and this commenter is that I actually know how one gets to freedom. How is freedom created? How do you gain that type of freedom? And the way that you do it is through a life of responsibility, of high standards, of discipline. Those are the things that lead to freedom and success and fulfillment. See, to me, freedom isn't the freedom to sleep with all the girls I ever meet. It's actually the freedom to build a meaningful, lifelong relationship that is healthy and that's fulfilling, right? A life of recklessness, of entitlement, of do whatever you want, do whatever feels good, often actually leads to chaos. It leads to decay. It leads to insecurity. It leads to regret. And no, I'm not uncomfortable saying that because I've lived on this earth for a few decades and I have eyes that can see. I mean, we all kind of know this, that people who live in impulsive, chaotic, free choices often actually self-harm. They often actually disintegrate. They often actually don't have anything to show for it at the end of the day, such as the stability that we all seek. This is even true emotionally. You could say, well, let your child feel whatever they want to feel. Let them just let it all out. You should be authentic. No, chaotic, volatile emotional worlds do not benefit the individual. It's actually emotional discipline, emotional control. It's actually emotional stability that gives us freedom to move through the world, to make decisions, to think our own thoughts, and to be productive individuals in the world. It's what gives us independence. The fact is, whether you like it or not, kids need structure and guidance to thrive. What this commenter is suggesting is that you just throw them to the wolves and let whatever happens happen. How about instead we do guidance now when they're young and freedom later? Look at this as the natural, gradual progression of development. A newborn baby has zero freedoms, right? We do everything for them. They have no independence. They can't actually assert their will, on anything. I mean, yeah, they get us to feed them and bathe them and put them to sleep, but they're not actually able to get in the car and drive away and go on a vacation and spend money, right? They are completely dependent on us. And all of the discipline is on us. We have to be disciplined. We have to change the diapers and soothe them and put them to sleep and feed them on the right schedule and everything. All of the discipline is with us. As a child grows, they start to transfer more and more discipline onto them. And when we see that a teenager really has discipline, they're getting to bed on time, they're staying off social media, they're doing their work, they're working hard, they're being a good friend, they're being a good family member, they're going to get more and more freedom. We're going to let them have more freedom on their phone or to go on a vacation or to hang out with friends because we see they have discipline. Discipline unlocks the freedom of choice that this original commenter wants for their child. But a lack of discipline, a lack of direction, a lack of moral compass is what leads to chaos and to self-sabotage. And finally, number 5 is that you can actually teach your family values without forcing them. Teaching kids to think critically about different perspectives is not the same as forcing obedience. Making suggestions, guidance, offering life advice, and modeling the type of life that you would like your child to emulate is not oppressive. When you explain your worldview clearly and with confidence, your kids will respect that certainty. They will feel safer. They will feel more clarity and conviction. They will be grateful that you have eliminated all the noise and given them a path to go down. And kids can handle nuance. They understand that there are exceptions to every rule. They understand that they don't need to judge other people who live differently, but they can still understand the values and the ideas that you are transferring onto them. And they won't accept them all. They might rebel against some. They might just disregard some. They might end up living a very different life than what you pictured for them. But if you don't offer them any path or any guidance, then remember, someone else will. And that someone might be predatory. They might be a cult leader. They might be someone radicalized or extremist or a fundamentalist. They might be lots of different things. We see it all the time. This might sound like fear-mongering, but this is just a really common occurrence, that kids who received no clear, warm, loving, inspiring direction from their parents went off and found it elsewhere. When I'm talking about offering your kids moral guidance, the suggestion is not that you become a dictatorial parent, that you become oppressive, that you force them, that you shame them, that you threaten them or punish them if they don't. The suggestion is that you become an inspiring leader, that you lead a life that's so awesome, that makes so much sense, that just seems so healthy and good and satisfying, that you look so fulfilled, that your child is drawn to that because they want to emulate that. They're like, hey, mom's cracked the code on this. I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to look for similar ideas and values. I would love for my child to look up to me and say, my mom seems to have a healthy body. My mom seems to have healthy relationships, a happy long-term marriage, stability, fulfilling and meaningful career. See if she's figured out a few things in life. Maybe her advice is worthwhile for me to take on. Maybe I could do similar things and ask her for advice because she's clearly cracked the code. It's kind of like when you go to the gym and you see someone who's really ripped and in shape. You're like, can you please guide me? Can you please help me? Tell me what to do. Discipline me, right? Don't just tell me live however you want to live, eat whatever you want to do, work out whenever you want. Just follow your feelings. Don't tell me that. Give me the plan. Give me the blueprint. Tell me when to squat, when to lift, what to push, what to eat. Please, I want to look like you. Can you help me make that happen? Parents are coaches. We are exactly that. We are exactly that gym instructor, but for life. We're there to tell our kids how to lead a meaningful life, how to develop themselves, their psyche, their mind, their heart, their soul, their body, their relationships, all of that into something that is productive, meaningful, and fulfilling. Really, if you can't guide your child with long-term benefits, with clarity, with direction, with confidence in these choices, then you are just a chauffeur, a babysitter, and a bill payer. And I don't mean that to sound harsh, but I mean that to empower you to really own your role as a life guide, as a coach, as a spiritual guide. Because teaching values is not about controlling your child. It's about empowering them and equipping them with the wisdom that they actually need to navigate this world. All right, that's it for today. I bet you have a ton of questions, of resistance, of pushback. I'd love to hear so in the comments below. Just do it respectfully, please. And what is one belief that you were taught when you were growing up that really shaped your life? Is it something that you feel uncomfortable sharing with your child for fear of sounding judgmental? Let's talk about it in the comments below. Now, if you're not sure how to be that confident leader, that's exactly what I teach inside of the HiFam Studio. Make sure you're signed up. We're about to open doors if you're watching this video as it drops. Make sure you're on the wait list so I can let you know when doors open and you can join. Inside there, I'm going to give you everything you need to craft a compelling vision for your family, to feel like, yes, I am my children's spiritual leader. I'm not just the chauffeur and the babysitter. I'm actually here to help them make good choices, lead a good life, empower their mindset, build a moral compass, and know how to grow up into productive, resilient, well-rounded, stand-up citizens. If that sounds good, make sure you're inside the HiFam Studio at hifam.com/studio. And if you like this video, you're gonna love my video on why I left gentle parenting. So make sure to watch that next. I'll see you in the next video. Keep on living that HiFam life.